Welcome to Giant Ibis. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, nearing the edges of extinction. And so we'll share species research, information, and conservation proposals. And then we'll spend part of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll perform a soundscape of gentleness, of reflection, of delight, and maybe of grieving. Without conservation activity and significant societal shift, many of these species may not survive the 21st century. And so perhaps we might acknowledge their passage with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, and with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the giant ibis. The giant ibis is a critically endangered avian, native to Southeast Asia, specifically Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. It is the largest of the ibis species, approximately 3.5 feet long, with a wingspan of about 5.5 feet, and weighing roughly 9 pounds. It has dark grayish-brown plumage with pale silver-gray highlights towards the wingtips. Its head is naked, no feathers, with wrinkled gray-brown skin. It has dark red eyes and a long yellow-brown decurved bill that can reach lengths of over 9 inches. Decurved just means curved downward. The bill is slightly hooked toward the earth. It has a long neck and long, bright red-orange legs. And its feet have 4 clawed digits, 3 talons facing forward, and 1 hallux facing backward. This is a very common toe arrangement in avian species. It's called anisodactyl. In the dream, all is song. Not like a musical, but like a perspective shift, like hearing an extra dimension. The wind is song. The shopkeeper sweeping is song. The many tourists asking directions to the Brooklyn Bridge are song. Bike bell is song, ambulance is song. The vibration of my phone when I'm hoping for your text is song. Soup near boiling on the stove is song. Autumn leaves underfoot are song. A dog barks its song. A bird sings. And so when I ask that classic human question, why does a bird sing? The giant ibis, with a voice like a grouchy Boston cabbie, calls back to me, because all is song. We hatch from the long silence into a life of singing, and then return to silence again. We make harmony and dissonance, the breath chorus of living. We really move air all together for a time. In the dream. Another philosophical ibis in the dream. The dawn chorus is the phrase that scientists use to describe the crescendo of birdsong that happens each day in the young morning light. Birds are waking up and need to communicate with each other about territory, mating, potential threats. And in these early hours, it's too dark for effective foraging, but light enough for birds to see each other and assess their surroundings. And so this makes dawn a really safe time for sharing information without being overly exposed to predator threats. The giant ibis lends its tenor to the dawn chorus as well. I'd like to play 2 field recordings for you now. These are both from Cambodia. The first, by recordist Yan Sam Neng, is from a summer morning at 6 a.m. And the second is from Patrick Aberg from winter, 6 a.m. The giant ibis is diurnal, meaning it's active during the day. Generally, mornings and late afternoons are peak foraging times. It is a carnivore, consuming aquatic invertebrates like worms, crab, snails, and insects, and also small vertebrate like fish, frogs, and eels, all extracted from shallow water and mud using that long, decurved bill. Their bill has a specialized sense organ called the bill tip organ. It's a collection of mechanoreceptors at the bill's tip. Mechanoreceptors are sensory receptors that detect stimuli like pressure, touch, and vibration. And so the ibis is able to find food it cannot see beneath the water surface and in the mud by probing with its bill and detecting movement or presence of prey with its bill tip organ. Briefly, let's connect three other bits of giant ibis anatomy to their feeding strategy. Its particularly long legs allow it to wade into small pools and marshlands and not get its feathers overly soaked. Relatedly, the lack of feathers on its head and neck are likely an adaptation to it, like putting its face in the mud all the time. Feathers would get like waterlogged or crusted with dirt. And lastly, the giant ibis has been observed using its clawed talons to root around in the mud to unearth potential prey. Giant ibis are generally solitary or forage in pairs, but may occasionally flock in small groups of less than 10 when feeding. They do form monogamous mating pair bonds that can last across several mating seasons and sometimes for life. I could not find much information about mating and mating rituals other than a mention that males may perform wing flapping and bowing actions to attract a mate. Once mated, though, we know that the giant ibis prefers to nest in tall trees, generally dipterocarp trees. The nests are these large platforms constructed from sticks and branches, typically high in the canopy for protection from predators. Nest building is a collaborative effort between the male and female pair. The female lays a clutch of 2 eggs, and the eggs are incubated by both parents over an incubation period that lasts about a month. We accurately think of avian incubation as like a bird sitting on an egg, which that's true, but there's also a little more going on there. The main goal is temperature regulation, so transferring body heat from the parent to the egg in effort to maintain an optimal temperature for embryonic development. Maintaining nest humidity is also important. Too much humidity can suffocate the developing embryo, while too little can cause dehydration and prevent proper hatching. And so parents regularly turn their eggs to ensure even heat and humidity distribution and to prevent the embryo from sticking to one side of the shell membrane. Well, and of course, a key aspect of the incubation period is the parent bird protecting the eggs from predation and from adverse weather conditions. Giant ibis are altricial, meaning that they are born helpless, and both parents actively participate in the feed and care of newly hatched chicks. And so a family unit consists of the breeding pair and their offspring, parents protecting and nurturing their young, providing regurgitated food until the young are old enough to forage independently. Young giant ibis remain dependent on their parents for several months, gradually learning to survive on their own. And then it takes roughly 4 years for a giant ibis to reach reproductive maturity. They can live as long as 22 years. The giant ibis is native to Southeast Asia, with most populations found in northeastern Cambodia, with a few occasional sightings in southern Laos and western Vietnam. This is a lowland plains habitat of seasonally flooded grasslands. And so it's a mix of open grassy plains with patches of forest and more dense vegetation that during the wet season become inundated with water, creating networks of temporary pools and marshlands, water holes that are an ideal foraging habitat for the ibis. This climate is tropical. Summer temps reach into the high 90s, while winter temperatures rarely drop below 65 degrees. May to October sees heavy rains, with an abundant annual rainfall of up to 80 inches. The giant ibis shares its habitat with sun bear, tiger beetle, Eurasian wild pig, Malayan porcupine, clouded leopard, Siamese crocodile, gray-headed fish eagle, small Asian mongoose, Eld's deer, water monitor, yellow-throated marten, green-crested lizard, great hornbill, Sunda pangolin, Asian elephant, jungle cat, reticulated python, green peafowl, golden jackal, slender-billed vulture, and many, many more. Historically, the giant ibis was found across Southeast Asia, but over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries, their population diminished due to human-induced habitat reduction and human predation. So specifically, this is wetland drainage for agriculture, mass deforestation for construction material and development, and then hunting and egg collection for food. And some of these threats persist today. Habitat destruction and degradation remains a significant threat. Large-scale land transformation for rubber, teak, and cassava plantation continue to reduce the giant ibis's natural habitat. And although it is illegal, hunting and trapping still occurs, driven by demand for wild meat and traditional medicine. The use of pesticides in agriculture indirectly affects the giant ibis by contaminating the water of their food sources. And human-induced climate change, of course, is a looming threat, altering rainfall patterns and increasing the frequency of extreme weather like drought and flood. Fortunately, most of the current giant ibis population reside on protected land in wildlife sanctuaries and protected forests. The Cambodian government enacted legal protection for the bird in 2007, and the Forestry Administration and Ministry of Environment in Cambodia have embarked on a decade-long plan to protect giant ibis habitat, to implement active interventions to increase survival and breeding success, and to conduct continued research to inform future conservation policy. So, for example, restoration of previously cleared land is being explored. Public outreach programs to discourage illegal poaching have shown success. And conservationists are monitoring and intervening on nesting sites. With such a small population, even quote-unquote natural predation is an extinction threat for the giant ibis. So scientists conducted a predator exclusion experiment in 2005 in which a 3-foot wide plastic belt was fixed to the lower trunk of giant ibis nest trees. And so the belt was hard and smooth enough to prevent climbing by any animals, like the common palm civet, that prey upon ibis eggs. The result was a nearly doubled survival rate for the eggs in nests on these treated trunks. Relatedly, a federal program is being explored to provide clean water to human communities near giant ibis habitats. So, in the recent past, during particularly dry seasons, humans would source water from ibis waterholes and their marshland habitats. And so the government is exploring shipping in water to prevent this destructive practice. The giant ibis was declared the national bird of Cambodia in 2005. Nevertheless, the giant ibis has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 1994, and their population is currently in decline. Our most recent counts estimate that less than 200 giant ibis remain in the wild. Information for today's show about the giant ibis was compiled from BirdLife International, from the Cambodian Journal of Natural History, Volume 1, from Conservation Leadership Program, from Forktail, the Journal of Asian Ornithology, number 28, from Conservation Biology, Volume 34, from Birding Asia, number 9, from Birds of the World at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, from the IUCN, from Bird Conservation International, Volume 19, number 1. Sound recordings were from Zeno Canto by Yang Samnang and Patrick Aberg. Information was also provided by the 10-year Species Action Plan for the Giant Ibis, the World Wildlife Federation, and Wikipedia. And so in a moment, I would like to perform some music in hopes of opening a space to be in contemplation of the other lives with whom we share our earth. I don't want to extract meaning from the giant ibis or put meaning upon it. Instead, I want to think about this music as an expression of my awe and to be a moment of pause to consider my own relationship to other life, in particular, as some of that life nears extinction. And so I will sit in this space of sound and awe, and I warmly invite you to join me. I honor the life force of the giant ibis. I will carry its human name in my record, and I am grateful to have shared time on our planet with this remarkable being. I lament the ways in which I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. I grieve. And so, in the name of the giant ibis, I pledge to reduce my consumption and my carbon footprint and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and inactions. And I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin and their habitat by individuals, corporations, and governments. I pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Badak Abais. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin.